Let's watch some YouTube videos.
What's going on, guys? So I was just thinking about my upbringing and how not only me feeling insecure at a time about not having a big kind of social circle and active social life that involved going out at night, going to bars and that kind of stuff, but why I think most self-respecting, decent, good men are probably going to not have much of a social life at all. They're probably going to be in many cases single. I'm not saying they're going to be totally isolated. They might have a few friends, but they're going to have a close circle. They might even have one very good friend. Which, again, if you can have one very good friend who has your back, consider yourself blessed. I might try to take that over 100 different people who are not really there for you or don't have your best interests. But when I look around and I see not only how much more surface level things have gotten to be, but even what people would consider social interactions, especially in the city I'm in, and many years ago in the age demographic that I was in, where pretty much everything around social interaction
Degeneracy.
at a subconscious level I felt was wrong. I couldn't even know why at the time because it was subconscious. I was like, it seemingly was something everyone else was doing, but I was thinking to myself, this is something where I just don't want to conform and give in because I can see that this is wrong. You shouldn't need a substance. You shouldn't need to ingest something that's going to make you not be your real self to socialize. That doesn't seem like real peace of mind. That doesn't seem like real confidence in who you are as a person. That seems very insecure and shallow to me. So it's not something I really got involved in, although there was a lot of pressure when I was younger. I went to a nightclub a few times and didn't like them, and now I can see why a lot of people say bad things about them. But as I got older through the years, I look back and I think how foolish I was to be insecure about not being part of those things. Because I've seen so many people who have substance abuse issues. I've seen so many people who have gone in big trouble with nightclubs, with knocking up and hookups and stuff like that, and flings and that kind of stuff. I've seen the damage that is done to people as they get closer to the age of 30 and even beyond that, because there are some people who are even in their 30s and 40s that still have not grown out of that behavior. But I've just seen how detrimental it is. And I just think how foolish I was to be so insecure about it, to even want to be part of this nonsense. This was a time before I had God in my life. This was a time before I had good friends in my life. This was a time before I made closer relationships with family members. And it was ultimately a time where I was mentally all over the place. Not in a good place, quite frankly. So even when you look at the way people are now, with the rise in kind of narcissistic behavior, another word I can call for it is just very dismissive of people's well-being. Even at your local store, you might not have much of an interaction at all. I was at a grocery store the other day, and the cashier wouldn't even acknowledge me, look at me, or anything. I'm like, at this point, I should have just gone and done self-checkout because it would have been the same kind of shallow interaction. I understand there's a variety of things. Some people have days where they perhaps aren't in a good mood, but this is a much more common occurrence than it should be. When it comes to the rise of narcissistic behavior, a lot of good, decent people make this mistake of getting in a friendship or relationship with someone who's a narcissist, thinking, okay, I'm going to show them the good because they've been done wrong or hurt or traumatized, and that's why they like that. I'm going to show them through essentially through being a good person that I can fix them, or I can change them, I can show them like I'm not that person.
Does not work.
That's straight up something mistake because these narcissists are drawn to good people. They want good people to be around them. If you're someone who is also a narcissist or someone who has a bad mindset or bad intentions, a narcissist is going to leave you alone. They want to drag people down to their level. They want to see people's lives in disarray. They want to create chaos. They want to create misery. And the only way to do that is to cling on to a good person. So you're really falling for it. If you are a good person, I think you're going to show them the light. Now, I've heard some people say that narcissism, of course, is a disorder, but that's not curable at all. That is something that they're doomed to be for the rest of their life. I've heard other people say that it can be fixed with therapy and perhaps all different kinds of stuff. But my thing is this. The only thing I can really say from my experience is just stay away from them. Don't involve yourself in a friendship with a narcissist. Don't involve yourself in a relationship with a narcissist because it's going to backfire. And it's quite frankly, in many ways, might backfire severely. It might take several months or even years to get back to your normal, kind of healthy thinking self. They're going to take a toll on your mental well-being, which in hindsight will take a toll on your physical well-being as well. And on the other hand, you also have people who are people pleasers, who say everything people want to hear, but not what they need to hear, which again, I don't think they're as dangerous. I don't think they're nearly as dangerous as full-on narcissists. But I've also dealt with those folks where they seem very kind, they're very generous, they're very giving. But you have to ask, what is there behind that? And what I've come to realize, I'm not saying this to be paranoid, I think people should be kind, should be caring, should be generous. But when you have a keen eye for it, you can tell the difference between someone who is essentially using that kindness for a form of power, that conformity for a form of power. Whereas with narcissists, they use manipulation and power kind of tactics. With someone who is a people pleaser, they'll use kind of conformity as a form of power. And I had a friend who was definitely a people pleaser. He'd been like that ever since he was younger. And again, with just growing up, you're going to realize that there are people from middle school, high school, your 20s, when you were a lot more mature mentally, and your interests were perhaps much different. You're just going to naturally go your own way in life with. But essentially, this friend would just do all these kind of things where I could tell that it wasn't genuine empathy. It wasn't genuine kindness. For example, I had a falling out with someone else who was another friend, and he decided to kind of weasel in the middle of it. He wanted to play both sides and gossip to both people. I'm thinking to myself, okay, number one, if this person feels like they're gossip about you, there's something wrong because a real friend is going to have your back. They're not going to gossip about you when you're not in the room. The other thing, the way he was doing it, playing both sides, see what side could he capitalize on to get the most admiration or essentially to come out the victor, to come out on whether they're called the winning side or essentially ways to get approval from others. When I'm like, dude, if you're a man, you're going to stand your ground. You're going to have your own view, your own opinion, regardless of what other people think of it. Again, I see so many people now just going along with all the nonsense and being afraid to even be individuals because they're scared of what people are going to think of their opinions or views on stuff. And the way I feel about that is you have to have some form of conviction. I'm not saying go and be wild and say outlandish stuff in public, but something that you should see is common sense. You shouldn't be afraid to stand on it. So I decided to cut the friend off because it was really just the best thing that I could do for my own well-being, for my own essentially just my own overall mindset, my own mental health is just steering away from people like that. Now, when it comes to decent, good men in the relationship kind of stuff, there's a lot we could dive into with that one. But even starting off with kind of the state of how people see dating and stuff like that. Now, I'm not one of these guys saying that there are no good women out there. I think there's always an exception to the rule, regardless of what people think. But there's definitely, I guess the best way I could put it is we're in a weird spot right now when it comes to kind of dating relationships. At the same time, we have a lot of men who don't want to acknowledge that they are also part of the problem with this kind of simping. I think the simping is the root cause of a lot of the issues nowadays with dating. People talk about women being entitled and stuff like that, but the men are the ones giving them money for no reason. The men are the ones giving them unwarranted, crazy attention for no reason. You even look at some of these IG models that get recommended through the algorithm and stuff like that. Go look at the comments. It's hundreds or even thousands of guys just simping, putting heart emojis and all this kind of stuff. Not somebody who even knows what's in their DMs. it's just gotten way out of control. There's a lot of men that really need to wake up. And again, men are the leaders. Men are supposed to be leaders. It doesn't matter if you have a fancy watch or fancy car. Again, people got that twisted too when they talk about the self-improvement stuff. They want to talk about having a nice watch, having this and that. Guys, some of the richest people I've known, they wear Casios. They don't have on a fancy Rolex. They're not driving a fancy Mercedes sports car. That doesn't make a man. You know, men should have purpose. Men should be leaders. Again, the men in many cases have lost their way, and we see what's going on with the rest of the stuff. Because we don't have real leadership like we should. And even the dating app stuff, same thing. Just getting bombarded with DMs nonstop. And guys, look, I'm guilty of it too. There have been girls who I hit up over Instagram DM, but if they don't show similar interest, then I'm going to move on. I'm not going to keep hitting them up nonstop over and over and over and over again. Like there was a girl who I known in high school where we had talked back then. She showed some interest, but I kind of reconnected with her over Instagram, and I DM'd her. She was in college at the time, and I just essentially said, about hanging out and reconnecting and stuff like that. And she basically put it off until spring break, which was several weeks. And I was like, okay, you know what? Clearly this girl's not that interested. She, wants to put off plans for that long. So I'm like, you know what? If you're not interested in her guys,
Yeah, just move on.
Just like trying to humiliate guys by showing like, oh, look at this, he's texting me all this time during the day. It's ridiculous. Besides that, you do have a lot of women that are part of the problem as well. You have the older generation of women who are telling younger women to not marry, to not date, to be Miss Independent, all this kind of stuff. Quite frankly, because they're miserable.
Yeah, misery loves company.
In many cases, either that or they're just trying to eliminate the competition so they can have the men to themselves. But guys, it's just completely ridiculous. And being someone who is decent or common sense or a good person, you're gonna look at stuff like that. You're gonna want no part of it. Now, again, why I say there is exceptions to the rule. I was watching a program. I actually said this to my friend. It was some guy who goes around, I think, rich areas, I don't know if it's Beverly Hills, but essentially asking people about the watches and stuff they're wearing. And this one pretty girl was asked, she said, oh, I want to be on social media and this kind of stuff. Like, that's what you need to find. Someone who doesn't want to be part of the social media stuff. I've heard people say that any kind of social media is a deal breaker. I would say even if your account's on private, it's only friends and family. I would say that's still a green flag, but just find someone who is just not wanting to be involved with this kind of stuff, the nightclub stuff, the bar stuff, the nightlife stuff, like all this kind of stuff. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying that you should be pessimistic. I'm just saying to have your guard up. I'm just saying to have good discernment. Because at the same time, guys, I've seen men who don't have good discernment and they get in relationships, quite frankly, out of lust, they overlook the red flags because they're so drawn to wanting the physical, and it totally backfires in the long run. I have seen crazy, wacky situations. Even myself, when I was younger, dealt with some crazy, wacky situations. But I'll put it this way, guys. People who are narcissists, they're going to take a toll on your life and well-being. It's bad enough everyone has natural stressors, family things, whether it's financial things, all different kinds of obligations. The last thing that we need, guys, is someone like this who is a narcissist, someone with these kind of behavioral traits who is going to act as a detriment to your life. Treat it as you would a disease. It's something you want to get rid of. It's something you want to eradicate. It's something you don't want part of your life. But I see so many good men make that mistake, thinking that they're going to turn a woman who is very narcissistic, dishonest, into a princess. And the same thing with even friendships. I made that mistake too, thinking that you're going to help people uplift them, and it totally backfires. Because I'll tell you guys something. I'll put this straight up. Most people that you see, not everyone, but most people you see in these bad positions with these kind of mindsets, people have tried to help them in the past. People have tried their best to give them the advice, probably the same advice you're giving them, good people, and trying to uplift them. And they're running the same circle over and over and over and over and over again. And it's going to take a toll on your peace of mind. Another thing I notice with a lot of narcissists is they regularly burn bridges with people because eventually they catch on to their games. And if you notice, the narcissist will always have an excuse as to why that breakup happened, why this friendship fell through. It's always the other person's fault. Never their fault at all. They can't take any accountability. And these are not the kind of people that you want to interact with. With the social media stuff, guys, I'd say this too. People seem to not even understand what real, genuine kind of social interaction should look like. Your self-worth should not be dictated by how many Instagram followers you have or how many likes a post had. I think that's something that's kind of going away a lot more. It seems like it's seemingly not as prevalent as it was before, but I remember, guys, a number of years ago, all this kind of clout chasing stuff, which I'm not saying it still doesn't go on, but just people just doing outlandish, wild things to try to get attention on the internet from other people, and just straight up acting ignorant on purpose. Anyone with a good conscience, anyone who wants to be decent, is not going to want to play part of that game. They're going to want to focus on other stuff. And the problem too, guys, is, again, I've said this in a previous video, and I stand by it, I do believe that there is more good than bad out there. I believe that people are capable of having good ethics and a moral compass. But look at what's being influenced. Look at kind of the world around us, social media, music, all different kinds of stuff. It's not showing things that are good. It's showing degenerate behavior. It's teaching men to not be leaders, to not be men, to not have purpose. It's teaching women all different kinds of crazy stuff and the dynamics being all over the place. So that's only something that's got to change. And that's why I think you have a lot of people saying that the best thing we can do is just unplug from that kind of stuff. Don't spend as much time on social media, which I'll be the first to admit. I don't want to come off as a hypocrite because I have social media and I have a hard time not using it. I even catch myself many mornings I'll wake up and I'll just be 20 minutes ago by and I'm just scrolling on my phone. I'm guilty of it too, guys. It's something I really want to get better at because it's really just causing so much damage. All the scrolling I think is it's going to cause a lot more damage than sitting in front of a computer or TV playing video games for 3 hours straight or whatever else you'd be doing. Just even experiences, things like that. Just people don't seem to appreciate them as much as they used to. And it's just in many ways almost like a blessing and a curse. Because I have a good friend of mine who is half the world away, who I'm able to talk to primarily on Instagram. Obviously with texts and call fees would be very expensive for that kind of distance. But seeing that, there's obviously things that can be beneficial. But what it's become has become very, very destructive. Like I remember the very early 2000s where you still had smartphones, you saw that kind of stuff, but it was almost the perfect blend of technology where phones and even when social media was around at the time was used for its relative purpose. But we've gone too far away from really just, quite frankly, decency. At least what's shown in the limelight. I even see some channels talking about this kind of stuff, which is good. In a way, this is again why I say it's a blessing and a curse, because with these kind of platforms and outlets, the message can be let out there about this kind of stuff, and especially if you're a younger adult. I wish I had this kind of content when I was in my teens or very early 20s. I really wish I did, quite frankly. So it's good to help people because sometimes you don't want to always learn from your mistakes, or you can make mistakes from other people's mistakes. That's also
Yes.
but sometimes too much information can be a detriment, where we don't even want to explore the kind of wonders of life, if that makes sense, and what real kind of social interactions could be. Not this kind of surface level stuff, not going out to bars, not going out to nightclubs, not shallow stuff, not relationships that are just revolved around control and power, kind of manipulation dynamics with narcissists. Do the best you can, guys, to unplug from that kind of stuff, and just try your best surrounding yourself with like-minded people, guys.
Let me know, what do you guys think?